Quadratic equation and introductions. In this video, we are going to discuss two things. What is quadratic equations and the general forms of quadratic equations. Let's start with the first one. What is quadratic equations? By definitions, a quadratic equation is a second-degree polynomial equation. What does this mean? In our lessons, when we talk about polynomial equation, it means an equation with only one variable and the power of the variable is not negative. And second degree means that the highest power of the variable is 2. Now let's see these examples of equations. For the first equations, the highest power of the variable is 1, and therefore this is the first degree polynomial equations, and we have a special name for it. We call it the linear equation. The second equation has the highest power of 2 in the variable, and therefore this is the second degree polynomial equations, and we just learned that the name of this equation is the quadratic equations. This one, the highest power is 3, and therefore this is a third degree polynomial equations, and we call it the cubic equations. This one, the highest power is 4, and this is the fourth degree polynomial equations, and the name is quadratic equations. So what is quadratic equations? Quadratic equations is a polynomial equations with second degree. Okay, it's a second degree polynomial equations, and the highest power of the variable is 2. Identifying quadratic equations. How do we tell whether an equation is a quadratic equation or not? Okay, of course we check the highest power of the variable, but sometimes it's not that straightforward. Okay, first equations. So in these equations, we can see that the highest power of the variable is 2 here, and therefore yes, this is a quadratic equations. The second one. Okay, now for these equations, the highest power is 3, not 2, and therefore this is not quadratic equations. Now how about this one? In this equation, there is a multiplications between two expressions. Okay, so if there's a multiplications of expressions, then we need to expand these two expressions. Then only we can see what's the highest power of the variable. Okay, so in this case, the very first thing that we are going to do is we multiply 2x with x, and we get 2x squared. Okay, and then we multiply 2x with -5, we get -10x, and then 3x multiplied by x, we get positive 3x, and 5 times -5, we get -15, and then it's equal to 1. Okay, now we can see what's the highest power. Okay, this is the highest power, and it's 2, and therefore this is quadratic equations. How about this one? Okay, in this case, we have variable as the denominators of fractions. It's important for us to know that in order to tell the degree of a polynomial equations, we can't have variable as denominator in the equations. So to solve these problems, what we do is we multiply these equations with x to eliminate this x as the denominators. Okay, let's see how to do this. So put a bracket and then multiply by x. Okay, multiply by x means each of the terms, this one, and this one, multiply by x. Okay, so x multiplied by 1 over x, we can cancel this x here. Okay, and then the answer become 1. X multiplied by 3x, we get 3x squared, and x multiplied by 0 is equal to 0. Okay, so in this case, the highest power of the variable is 2, and therefore, yes, this is a quadratic equations. Let's see another example. 1 over x squared plus 3x equal to 0. Now to eliminate this x squared, we need to multiply the whole equation by x squared. Okay, so x squared multiplied by 1 over x squared, this will be cancelled, and then we get 1, and then 3x multiplied by x squared, we get 3x cubed, and 0 multiplied by x squared, we get 0. Okay, in this case, the highest power is 3 for the variable, and therefore this is not quadratic equation. So this is how we tell whether an equation is a quadratic equation or not quadratic equations. If it's a multiplications of an expression with another expression, especially when it has x here, then we need to expand these two expressions. Then we can tell the highest power of the variable. Now, if we have x in a fractions, okay, then we need to eliminate this x by multiply the whole equations by a variable like x or x squared. Then we can tell what's the highest power, x squared or x cubed. Then we know whether it's quadratic equations or not quadratic equations. General form of a quadratic equations. We can write quadratic equations in this form, and this is called a general form. By using the general form, or by writing a quadratic equations into its general form, it can really help us a lot in solving questions related to quadratic equations. So in this equation, the x is the variable and the ABC is the coefficients. This is a terminology that you need to know. For the general form, okay, for it to become a quadratic equation, the a cannot be 0. Why? Because when a equals to 0, 0 times x squared equals to 0. Then the equations become bx plus c. And the highest power is x, not x squared. And therefore, this is not quadratic equation anymore. Okay? To make this a quadratic equation, our x cannot be 0. So in this general form, we put the x squared terms as the first term, and then the x as the second term, and the coefficients without x as the third term. And then on the right hand side, we must have a 0 here. Okay, we cannot have a number, it must be in 0. So this is called the general form. Now if b equals to 0, this is simple, b equals to 0, so 0 multiplied by x will get 0, then the equation will become ax squared plus c. Now this is okay because the highest power is 2, and this is quadratic equations. And if c equals to 0, this is the equation, and yes, it's still a quadratic equation because the higher power is 2 for the variable. Okay, so this is the general forms of quadratic equation, and make sure that you know how to write the quadratic equations in the general form, because it really helps us a lot to solve the problems. Okay, let's see the field example. Find the coefficient a, b, and c of the following quadratic equations. Okay, if they ask you to find the coefficients a, b, and c, means that you need to rewrite the equation in general form. Okay, let's start with the first one. Okay, the first one is already in general form. Okay, the first term is x squared, second term x, the third term is this number without x, and then the right hand side of this equal sign is 0. So this is general form, and we can tell directly what's the a. Okay, so a is the coefficients of x squared. This is a, and therefore we say a equal to 67, and this is b. This is b. Okay, so this is the general form. Okay, so coefficients of x squared is a, and coefficients of x is b, and c has no x. Okay, so b equal to 31. Okay, 31 here, and then and our c equal to 81. So this is 81. The second question, a equal to -3. Okay, -3, and b equal to, and that's all. We have no c. If we have no c, means that c equal to 0. Okay, so b equal to 6 and c equal to 0. C equal to 0. Okay, how about this one? Okay. Now if we have no shown coefficients, okay, there's no coefficients here, okay, it means that it's equal to 1. Yep. Okay, if no number here means that equal to 1, and therefore our a is equal to 1. Okay, we don't have b, okay, because there's no x terms. Okay, we don't have b, or the b equal to 0, and this is c. This is c, and c equal to 3. So b equal to 0 and c equal to 3. B equal to 0, c equal to 3. Okay, how about this one? Okay, this one we have the x squared terms, but we don't have b, x, and c. A equal to 5. Since we don't have b, it means b equal to 0, and we have no c as well, and therefore c equal to 0. Okay, so that's how we tell the coefficients of a quadratic equations. Now let's see another example. Again, in these questions, we are asked to find a, b, and c, and in these questions, the equation is not in general form, and therefore we need to change all of this to general form in order to find a, b, and c. And let's start with the first question. Now for first question, we have multiplications of a term with an expression, and we need to expand this in order to write the equations in general form. So x multiplied by x, we get x squared, x multiplied by 2, we get 2x. And to the right hand side, the equation is not equal to 0. And for general form, it must be equal to 0. And therefore, we shift these two terms to the left. Okay, so it becomes negative px minus 5 equal to 0. And now we have another problem because we have two x term here, and in general form we only have one x term. And to solve this problem, we factorize x. So the equations become this. Okay, after factorizing x. Okay, so now this is in general form, and then we can tell what is the a, b, and c. And for the first terms, the coefficients is hidden, and we know that if this is the case, then the coefficient equal to 1. So therefore, a equal to 1, b equal to 2 minus p, and c equal to negative 5. Question number 2. This one is simple. Yep. We have two terms to the right, and for general form, this must be equal to 0. So we shift these two terms to the left. So this is what we have. Okay, then from here, actually, we can tell directly what's the a, b, and c. This is our a. This is our a. And this is our b, the coefficients of x. This is b. And this whole thing is c. So c equal to negative 2 minus 8p. Question number 3, c. So in these equations, we have x as the denominator, and we learned that we need to eliminate this. And to eliminate this, we multiply the equations by x. Okay, x multiplied by x, it will cancel off. This is what we get. Okay, x squared must be the first term, x is the second term, and c is this one is the third term. So we move this to the left. So it becomes 3x squared plus 1 equal to 0. And our a equal to 3, that's the coefficients of x squared. Now we don't have x term here, means that the b equal to 0. Okay, and this is our c equal to 1. So this is how we find the a, b, and c of an equation. So we must write these equations in general form, that only we can tell what's the coefficients a, b, and c. So conclusions. So in this video, we learned that what's quadratic equation. A quadratic equation is a second degree polynomial equations, and then we learned what's the general forms of the quadratic equations. And this is a general form. The first term is x squared, second term is x, and the third terms is terms without x, and the right hand side must be 0. Thank you for watching this video.